guys, I'm Kay Corey with the Atom 101. We're going to go over some tragic events that have been taking place in sea life and why it's taking place and the science behind why it's taking place. I have been researching articles about the equivalent of about 2.5 years on radiation, radiobiology, but in all honesty, I've been researching radiobiology for about the past 23 to 25 years because I worked in it for about 23 years. So, in the medical side of it, in nuclear, not with nuclear weapons or anything like that. I would never do that because I got into medical field for healing, help people, help make people better, not for any other reason. So, nuclear science is in complete opposition to anything that is of health or a good consequence of health. It destroys DNA, it destroys anything biological, and it also destroys non-biologicals. So, and there's plenty of science out on the subject. I can read you off a few of these articles that I've come across and researched. Radiation exposure of bone marrow cells to strontium-90 during early development is a possible cofactor in the etiology of AIDS. J. Shear, Annual Meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, May 29th, 1986. The 1983 SAT scores and their link to nuclear fallout with S. Bell, Phi Delta Kappan, January 1984. A nuclear war destruction, devastating effect on climate with W.T. Land, letter to the New York Times dealing with likelihood of temperature decline, May 28, 1982. Shutdown, nuclear power on trial. Radiation is causing cancer and birth defects with John W. Goffman, The Book Publishing Company, Summertown, Tennessee, 1979. I could go on and on. The health effects of low-level radiation, proceedings of a symposium held at the House of Commons, London, England, 1996, Richard Bramhall. Krypton 85 releases from nuclear reprocessing facilities as a cofactor in the destruction of the atmospheric ozone layer. Mr. Wieland Gibel, Stratolex, volume 172 to 173, March 3rd, 1994. And then, of course, we have the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, uranyl peroxide enhanced nuclear fuel corrosion in seawater. They knew that they were not supposed to pour seawater on highly irradiated fuel, which is MOX fuel or plutonium or any nuclear fuel, because it's all uranium based and it creates buckyballs or uranyl peroxide, and it causes the fuel to corrode even more in seawater, and it causes the death of everything in seawater. It's a tragedy. Now, this article from the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences was sponsored by no less than TEPCO, Lockheed Martin, GE, and all of the governments, especially the United States government. And Navratilsky was the main author of this particular article. Now, you got to ask yourself, who funds these universities? Okay, who actually gives them the money to do these studies? Well, that would be people like GE, who makes the reactors in the first place, Lockheed Martin, who makes the nuclear weapons, and the governments who use and distribute the nuclear weapons. Now, Dana Durnford, nuclearproctologist.org, talked about the die-off of large amounts of whales this week. Today is November 3rd, 2016, and we're going to go over why these whales have been dying off and why the Pacific Ocean is in its finishing stages, and that would be from nuclear fuel corrosion in seawater, and uranyl peroxide is enhancing that corrosion. When the cooling system started to fail as a result of the earthquake, which was like a 9.2 on the Richter scale, and then the tsunami slammed into the Japanese coast, and then the wall of water came in and pummeled the nuclear reactors. It wasn't bad enough that the nuclear reactors all shook for 6 minutes solid in a velocity that you and I, unless you've been in that kind of earthquake, which most of us have not, and will never, well, I shouldn't say we'll never experience. We've not experienced thus far an earthquake of that magnitude. But the Japanese people have, and they could probably tell you what it felt like to be shaken virtually apart. I mean, some people were found dead, missing. There's been massive die-offs in Japan, but that wasn't just from the earthquake or the resulting tsunami. The 50 or so nuclear reactors that are all strategically placed around the coast of Japan likely is the main reason why most of those people died an early death and continue to die early deaths, and horrible deaths at that. And people in the United States, you're not out of, you are certainly getting pummeled. We are certainly getting pummeled too. Your children are dying, your adults are dying, your elderly are dying, strokes, heart attacks, diabetes, 1,800 different autoimmune deficiencies and diseases, AIDS, Ebola, you name it. A lot of it can be traced back to irradiated nuclear fuel, compromised irradiated fuel. I don't know what the difference is between irradiated fuel and compromised irradiated fuel, but I'm assuming they mean that it was out in the atmosphere and ground, and just it was distributed in the ocean, in the Pacific. When the cooling systems failed at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, they could not get fresh water into the reactors. There were 4 loaded reactors. Those 4 loaded reactors were, one of which was loaded with MOX, mixed oxide fuel. The other 3, not sure what the composition of the fuel was, but they had spent fuel pools on top of the reactors, so that made any one of those reactors a million times worse than most of the reactors that are in the United States, with maybe the exception of the laboratories that do research for, research mixed oxide fuels, weapons, weapons. They do fuel for weapons. Those places would have plutonium all over the place. So, and all of the other really bad isotopes. But plutonium is pretty much one of the deadliest in terms of how fast and how hard it's going to get you. When the copious amounts of seawater were used to cool the fuel, an intense radiation field being present in that area, it created in a rapidly evolving system that released vast amounts of radionuclides into the environment, and the contaminated water that remains on site, and then it has been released into the Pacific Ocean. The fuel matrix, it says the fuel matrix at the Fukushima Daiichi site is mainly UO2, which is uranium oxide, or mixed oxide fuel, whose behavior will largely dictate release of matrix incorporated plutonium and various other radionuclides into water as a coolant, used as a coolant. The intense radiation field of the fuel will cause radiolysis of water, that's the irradiation of water, and formation of peroxide as well as other species. Don't know what those other species are. It hydrolyzes some of the water. But peroxide is deadly to the water because, as any living organism, hydrogen peroxide or uranyl peroxide combusts your cells and your organs and tissues, causing death. Peroxide enhances the corrosion rate of uranium oxide by oxidizing the more soluble uranium that exists as the linear deoxouranyl cation. That's UO2 2+. Peroxide strongly complexes uranyl. It makes it more complicated, which increases its aqueous solubility under alkaline conditions. Now, the ocean is alkaline. The water is usually 8+ alkaline. So they're just saying that the peroxide increases the ability of the uranium and all of its deadly counterparts like plutonium to travel and cause irreparable harm. Now, I'm not making this up. This is not conjecture. This is a PNAS paper. It is the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, February 7th, 2012, volume 109, number 6. Okay? So, now, what is all of this, all of these articles, what were all these articles done for? They've studied nuclear fuel and the irradiation of living biologicals for well over 70 years. There's all kinds of documented studies. You can go on the internet and pull up thousands and thousands of studies. They did human plutonium studies here in the United States of America, where they injected plutonium into unwilling participants. That was done by the American Medical Association. They've also done dog studies at Lovelace Respiratory Institute. I call it Loveless Respiratory Institute, but it's Lovelace Respiratory Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You can go and look at those studies. You have to have a very strong constitution to be able to, to be able to just wrap your mind around the fact that doctors have injected humans and animals with these deadly substances and just watched them die, just let them just die. But it makes perfect sense to me because nuclear scientists don't have any hearts, and they don't, and their degrees are pretty much worthless to the human race. If they were of any worth to the human race, they would have found a way to eliminate the very thing that they studied a very, very long time ago, like 70 plus years ago. Einstein himself was pretty upset at himself for doing what he did with nuclear criticality and helping develop the nuclear bomb, but I do believe he was probably coerced by several governments to do what he did. And we don't really need to talk about that. Okay, we're going to talk about the whale die-offs and how the Pacific is in its death throes. Dana Durnford, the nuclearproctologist.org, has all of the information. You can go and watch this video. The video's name is 80 Killer Whales Emaciated, Another Death, Pacific Ocean Die-Off in Finishing Stages. He's got some news articles that we're going to listen to. I can't show you the video because it just won't be good quality. So here we go. We're going to listen to some of these journalists talk to you about how many whales are dying off. And this is just a few of the articles. There have been massive mammal, marine, sea life die-offs. Not just whales, but whales are very high up on the food chain. They're bigger animals. They're bigger mammals, to be precise. And when they start dying off at the mass that it would take to kill one of those mammals, you and I, as a mammal, we're in dire straits. And, we've allowed these people to do this for 70 years, and they need to be shut down. They need to be held accountable. They need to be stripped of their nobility, or pseudo-nobility. They need to be held accountable. The justice needs to take place, okay? Just quite frankly, they need to stop or try to find a solution for these meltdowns and get them at least to the point where they can put a sarcophagus over the fuel or whatever's left of the fuel. It's probably all aerosolized, and that's the worst thing I could possibly think of, but probably most of it has aerosolized and gone into the atmosphere, which is creating this extinction level event for not only the marine life but also for humans. That's not conjecture, that's science, okay? Go read it. You can read it on E&E News. You can argue with it all you want, but you know what? Your days are numbered, so just remember that. And as far as a nuclear scientist, you couldn't be more worthless to the human race. You will be held accountable. It's just a matter of time. All right, let's listen to this.
Right here. We're going to play a clip. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the extinction event. over the last couple of years in particular. We're going to show you the documentation. We're going to break it down. This is horrifying, this story, and there's no way to sweet talk it away. Let's just go for broke. Bump the audio up after, so hang on.
One of the orcas that calls Washington Water's home has died, and now her calf is in danger. As King 5's Glenn Farley reports, this latest loss now leaves us with as few as 80 whales.
Washington's orcas belong to families. Scientists call them pods. Those pods have letters, J, K, and L. And this is J-Pod and Happier Times, as seen from Sky King swimming in the San Juans a few years ago. Like highly visible fingerprints, orcas are easily identified by the distinctive patterns on their backs, referred to as saddle patches. And this month, a key member of J-Pod seemed to disappear. And it's not the first loss this year.
Well, I am alarmed. I've seen the necropsy reports from J32.
Ken Balcom has studied these whales, including their ability to reproduce, for decades. He's with the Center for Whale Research.
Okay. Ken Balcom is with the Center for Whale Research in the Puget Sound, around Hanford, Washington, and he won't even mention the Fukushima word. Can anybody tell me for $1 why he's not mentioning the word radiation? I guess that's $1 million question, or maybe it's more than $1 million, huh?
Far more sinister, where we're losing reproductive females and their babies. When you don't reproduce anymore, you don't have a population.
Really?
The news, while not confirmed by a carcass, might as well be. This is the last picture of J28 taken by Balcom on October 2nd, along with her youngest calf, J54, a male. He says the whales are emaciated, underweight, underfed, and the short supply of the whale's natural prey, Chinook salmon, forced the mothers to draw from fat, often filled with accumulated toxins from their own bodies, and those toxins are then transmitted to their young. The news is likely worse. Researchers took this photo of J54 being supported by other family members so he can breathe, and suspect, too, he has likely died.
J28 is survived by her mother, J17, two sisters, J35 and 53, a brother, J44.
Balcom, other scientists, and activists presented their findings at a news conference this afternoon, which at times felt more like a wake.
Yeah, I wish they present their findings as the fact that these whales and these sea creatures are dying off as a result of radiation and enhanced uranyl peroxide fuel corrosion, nuclear fuel corrosion in seawater. And the radiation word, radiolysis, is never mentioned by these marine biologists that have degrees this long. So their degrees are worthless. They're worthless to the human race. Don't want to think so? Well, when you start dying and you get cancer or you get any of the other 1,800 autoimmune deficiency disorders, you're going to probably agree with me rather than them.
On that decision this afternoon if the Corps of Engineers wanted to.
And the call to breach 4 dams in the Snake River to bring those stocks of Chinook back up renewed. In Seattle, Glenn Farley, King 5 News.
Wow. So what they're talking about, they got it wrong anyway, obviously. The whales don't survive on salmon. They can eat halibut. They can eat dogfish. And they can just slap the dogfish and get the pups out of it for the babies and that. They can eat all the species in the ocean. They can eat whales. And they certainly could eat, and did, eat sea lions, and seals was the bigger part of their diet because the salmon only come once a year. And so blowing the dams, what you were seeing there, because every story is emaciated whales for the last couple of years. But blowing the dams is because the way they were looking at it as activists and everybody else, well, if we blow the dam, then there'll be enough salmon might be able to come back in 4 years, and any whales that are left, there'll be a little bit of food there, because that's what they're thinking, but that's not the fact. I remember going to walk off the side of the boat and all the dive gear one time, and there was a killer whale right underneath me looking at me, and I was diving deep dives during that period, and our take was like 20 minutes or something. And you come up in the back of the boat and you'd be looking at your computer so you can get another 10 or 15 minutes on the bottom. So you kill 9 tanks a day doing it. That was green urchins up on the inside passage here in British Columbia in particular, the one I'm thinking of, but certainly, 14,000 hours underwater. Probably could tell you a more appropriate story, but the killer whale.
The man, Dana Durford, has had 14,000 hours of commercial diving on the ocean. I think he's qualified to go do an expedition for life on the Canadian coast, which he did. He took a dinghy up and down the whole entire Canadian coast up to Alaska from top to bottom, or from bottom to top, I should say. And did a search for life. What he found was the pictures that you can find at nuclearproctologist.org. Basically, what you saw before Fukushima was beautiful, vibrant colors of starfish, every species, sea anemones, plankton, kelp forests, birds, other invertebrates, mussels, clams, oysters, whatever. And now, post-Fukushima, you find pieces of seaweed clinging to rocks. So that's why the animals are starving. The animals that come up onto the rocks to find food, like the birds and the sea lions and all of the ones that have to find food on the rocks, are not finding those starfish, or not finding those small animals that they used to eat in the rocks. So they're dying, they're starving. Let's fast forward to the other baby whales and dolphins found dead on the west coast.
Humpback whales, corpses of sea lions, birds, sea turtles decomposing, fears for whales encountering radiation hot spots, blah, blah, blah. This, we're going to play another set of little videos. It's about a minute long.
Okay, so we had 80 whales, 13 baby gray whales and 55 dolphins found dead on West Coast. This was E&E News, published April 3rd, 2015. You can go onto that website by E&E News and find this article. Corpses of sea lions, birds, sea turtles decomposing. Mysterious deaths probed by government. Fear, they did say fear for whales encountering radiation hotspots. You think so? Maybe because of uranyl peroxide enhanced nuclear fuel corrosion in seawater, maybe? Volunteers trained about dangers of radiation. Well, they should be. And they should be putting out to the public that these things are dying and decomposing because of radiation. And they're starving because their food source is gone. Now, there was another article, March 9th, 2016, that Dana got to, that says about the birds on the coast.
It's one of the biggest mysteries Alaska has seen in
Alaskan
some time.
coast.
What caused hundreds of thousands of seabirds
Hundreds
to wash up on our shores?
of thousands
And
of
as
seabirds
KTVO
washed up on the
Maxwell tells us
Alaskan
there's
shore.
Another mystery
Dead.
tonight, why the birds are no longer turning up in droves.
They're calling MERS.
that showed up on the hay flats up in Palmer.
Scientists say the die-off has slowed.
These birds were probably
They say the die-off is slowed. I don't think so. Maybe because there's not a lot left to die off.
Birds perform any necropsies. They actually have
Might be something to consider.
We're not finding any food.
They know the birds are
U.S. Fish and
The
Wildlife
bigger
did this
question is why?
particular report.
Scientists say as many as
Okay, let's go. Let's peruse. In Patagonia, Chile, 337 whales beached in largest stranding ever. They're likely SEI whales, which are endangered.
The same year. Now, just to have two whales on a beach go up into one beach is really rare, because what's the odds of two dead animals in the ocean washing up on the same beach? Two of them dying at the one time, let alone two of them washing up on the same beach, let alone 337. Well, the odds are astronomical for two to wash up on the same beach. How about 300? So it's not funny, I know, but I'm not trying to be funny. Thousands, this is a gallows laugh. Thousands of birds abandon eggs, nest on Florida Island.
Okay, so there's a lot of birds that are abandoning their nest and dying in Florida. So you can see that it's not very good for the Pacific Ocean. I know there's been massive amounts of birds, small animals, small rodents like squirrels, dying off here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And fish, a lot of fish have been, I've found a lot of fish along the coast, in the water, floating dead, and on the shore, just a massive amount of them that floated up dead. And you know, they'll tell you it's from, oh, they caught them in the sea nets, and you know, they were released after they died, and then they just floated to shore. Well, you know, you can only buy that story if you're completely gullible, and I'm just not that gullible. So anyway, folks, go read this for yourself. Go to the nuclearproctologist.org. Find his article, 80 Killer Whales Emaciated, Pacific Ocean Die-Off in Finishing Stages, or go see the pre-Fukushima and post-Fukushima pictures for yourself at the nuclearproctologist.org. This is Kay Coury. I hope you have a great day. Love and hugs to you all. Love and hugs to my fellow hounds. And thank you, a big, big thank you to Dana Durnford for doing all of this gigantic amount of research and putting it out there for us to repurpose and put out here for everybody that doesn't hear Dana to